Alright guys, welcome to the roof of a monster. We are here in the climbing gym in Mitterdorf, which is a huge rope climbing gym, as you can see here, very high with a monster roof. And I thought, well, actually there is no better opportunity to really film a anti-fear of falling video, I would say, than in this gym. So yeah, we're gonna take a look at how we can actually train to overcome fear of falling, basically, so mental training really. And for this purpose, Thorsten is gonna climb up this route here, and also he's gonna climb into the roof and take a couple of falls so that you can see how what a usual fall training looks like. So it should be quite interesting. I hope it's gonna be a cool video. I'll try my best to capture these shots in slow motion from above here so that we can analyze them later on, and yeah, hope you get something from it. I hope Thorsten didn't forget to press record on the floor camera, which we also have as well down there, so that we can see what actually his belayer is doing while he is falling. So before we literally jump into practice, let me say a few things about theory. A good fall training exploits the principle of overcoming any fear in life, requiring that it is somewhat irrational, meaning that the underlying cause, the danger, is actually not that great. Step 1, exposing yourself to the fear, and step 2, experience that nothing bad happens. By repeating this pattern over and over again, this will trick your mind into believing that what you're doing is actually not dangerous, which will result in less and less fear and more bravery. For us as climbers, this means that we have to take a lot of falls, but this also means that nothing bad must happen while we take these falls. As a side note, if something bad happens during a fall, this will very likely increase the fear of falling of the climber even more. So we have to try our best to avoid that. And in this context, we have to talk a bit about dynamic belaying. During a fall training, it seems like all the focus is on the climber and his fear of falling, but actually this training is also very important for the belayer, who needs to learn how to catch the falls of his partner in a dynamic fashion. Therefore, he has to develop a feeling for his own and his partner's body weight, how they are connected via the rope, how much friction is in the system, timing, positioning on the ground, belaying device, and so on and so forth. And this is also a very important aspect of a good fall training. The climber has to give his belayer honest feedback if what he is doing actually works, so that nothing bad happens to him during falls in the future. I think I have mentioned a few things about dynamic belaying in previous videos, but actually I'd like to create a dedicated episode on dynamic belaying in the near future, because it is still lacking on the channel and it is actually a quite important topic when it comes to lead climbing. Until then, I'd like to recommend you to take a little lead climbing course where they will hopefully show you the basics so that you can start your own proper fall training and refine it with your partner. So although this video is going to be more about how to structurize a good fall training and stuff like that, I will lose a few words on the belaying that was done during this particular fall training, because I think it was actually far from ideal and I don't want you to replicate that. When it comes to structurizing a fall training, it's actually very simple. You're gonna start easy and increase the challenge step by step. For the sake of time efficiency, we skip the first few steps in this training. That's why I'm gonna tell you what they should look like now. The very first step is to actually build up some gear trust. As a beginner, you're not that convinced. Will this harness capture me? Will this not hold? Will this thin piece of shoelace carry my whole weight and even more? So you get on there in top rope mode, climb a few meters, and simply sit into the system a few times. Next, you can try to create a bit of slack and sit down again. Usually the rope will be dynamic enough to give a soft catch in top rope mode. But of course the belayer can already try to belay somewhat dynamically as well. Now you should have at least some level of trust in your gear. Next step, lead climbing mode. Climb a few meters and sit down with the last clipped quick draw at your hips. Now climb 10 centimeters above the last clipped quick draw and sit down again. Next time 20 centimeters, and so on and so forth. The bigger the fall, the more important a dynamic belay becomes. So give your belayer some time to learn it. Try different terrain, slabs, verticals, overhangs. You will discover that the overhang is actually the least dangerous when it comes to falling, apart from a special case which we're gonna take a look at as well, although it causes usually the most fear of falling in climbers. So I'd say let's start with the practice. Let's take a look at these falls. And here we have the first fall of this fall training. As you can see, the climber is in lead climbing mode and the last clipped quick draw is at the level of his hips. And when we take a look at the belayer here in slow-mo, it's actually not that necessary to give out so much slack in this situation, because the impact is not going to be very high when you sit down with your last clipped quick draw at your hips. And as you can see, the catch is not really dynamic as well. You're just gaining a lot of energy basically by falling, and then you get an abrupt deceleration because the belayer does not really slow down the fall in a homogeneous way, so to say. So here we have the second fall. As you can see, the climber is already like 1 meter above the last clipped quick draw. And as you can see here again, actually, the belayer is giving out quite a lot of slack, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the catch is going to be dynamic. As you can see here again, the climber is simply gaining a lot of energy by falling into a lot of slack, and then he's going to be stopped in an abrupt manner. And this is actually something that should be avoided, because as you can see, it creates a lot of energy towards the wall, which the climber has to stop with his feet. And in this situation, it's actually not even necessary that the climber touches the wall after the fall if he is belayed in a very dynamic and correct fashion. Alright, so we just made the first 2 falls. I think this climbing team is getting used to each other now, because you gotta get used to the weight of your partner when you do a fall training like this, because every pair of climbers is different and is gonna behave differently when belaying a fall basically. So now what Thorsten is doing is getting a little more height into this little roof section here. So for this next fall, we increased the challenge a little bit. As you can see, the last clipped quick draw is below this roof section here, and the climber has already gained some meters above it. Now, this is one of the situations, the few situations actually, where falling into an overhang can be dangerous, because as you can see, you get a lot of horizontal pull towards the wall. And I've talked about this in a previous video, and it's very hard to belay such a catch actually very dynamically so that the climber doesn't even touch the wall. It's actually almost impossible. For this next fall, we increased the challenge even more. As you can see, the climber has gained a few more meters above the last clipped quick draw below the overhang. And as you can see, he's generating a lot of pull towards the wall here. And this is also because the belayer doesn't really belay dynamically. As you can see, he's just standing there and waiting for the pull of the climber to arrive. And this is not enough in such a situation. You have to gain some distance from the wall actually, and when the pull arrives, then you have to somehow run towards the wall to kind of decelerate the rope in a homogeneous fashion, not in an abrupt fashion like it is done here. And this was actually a very hard impact. I could even see it from above there where I was filming. So the climber gave feedback that this was actually a too hard catch. So let's see how the belayer is gonna react to that. So pretty much the same falling position as before again. Let's see if it's going to be better this time. As you can see, the belayer, this is the right amount of slack, I would say, for this situation. But as you can see, the belayer really just waits until the pull of the climber arrives. And in such a situation, that's not enough. You have to run towards the wall. You have to gain some distance from the wall beforehand and then run towards the wall or jump into the rope, not necessarily into the rope, but jump, so that the rope is going to be decelerated in a more homogeneous way and not in an abrupt way like it is done here. Let's take a look at it again in slow motion. You will be able to see that the belayer is actually just standing there doing nothing, waiting until the pull arrives. Now he jumped a little bit actually compared to before. I just saw that now. But still, I think that's not enough for a situation like that. If I would belay this fall, then I would try to really jump as much into the rope as possible so that I almost end up with my face at the first quick draw of this route, because I got pulled up so much. Alright, so Thorsten is gaining some height again here. We decided to film this fall another time because the first 2 ones were quite hard actually, and there is still some more potential for a more dynamic fall here. So we thought we wanted to have the comparison to basically what this fall would look like if it was 100% dynamic. So let's see what we can do. Alright, one more time. Let's see if it's gonna be better this time. Boom. As you can see, this was already more into the direction of a really dynamic fall. Take a look at the belayer. Now he's really jumping away somewhat actively, I would say. There is still more potential, I would say, for this for this catch to be more dynamic. And as you can see, when you paid close attention to the falls before, the climber's impact into the wall was a bit lower than before. So that means that there was already some kind of deceleration going on, and that's a good thing, I would say. But there is still more potential for a more dynamic catch here. Alright, so now that we've gathered a few cool fall shots, the last one here was pretty dynamic actually. This is a very hard to belay fall here because the last clipped quick draw is below this roof, as you can see, and that means that you will get a lot of momentum towards the wall when you take a fall from above it. So it's kind of really hard for the belayer here to prevent the climber from touching the wall actually, which would be ideal from an injury prevention point of view, of course, because then you have no impact. So now Thorsten is gathering another height, basically, even more height. He's gonna climb to the top of this wall here, of this head wall, and then he even is going to continue into this roof here, and then we're gonna take the last final super big fall of this fear of falling session, and then Thorsten should be basically free from fear of falling. Let's see what he has to say about that. This is a situation that you will rarely encounter in any gym or even in the outdoors. So this was really just to combat the fear of falling of the climber even more by doing a super huge fall. But from the learning value, also for dynamic belaying, this is actually not very useful. But anyway, it's still good to experience this feeling when you're really in a short moment of zero gravity and your stomach is gonna be pulled upwards. As you can see, this fall was really big. And yeah, we also managed to make it dynamic enough so that the climber doesn't touch the wall actually. And when we see this again here in normal speed with the belayer in picture, as you can see, he's pulled a lot of slack out there. And again, this goes to show that this belayer believes that a lot of slack means a dynamic catch. And this catch was actually dynamic because, as you have seen, he gained a lot of distance from the wall, and this caused him to be dragged towards the wall in a homogeneous fashion, which decelerated the rope in a homogeneous fashion. But it's actually not necessary to give out that much slack in this situation, I would say. A little bit of slack, of course, but actually only gaining a lot of distance from the wall, and then also jump into the rope and catch your own momentum, so to say, with your feet. Because when you do it like that, you can see that he's running into the danger that he's going to be pulled towards the wall so much that he's going to injure himself down there. The belayer, that's what I'm talking about. So yeah, that was this fall training, basically the final fall. You also have to consider that when you belay a very dynamic catch, that sometimes the belayer, the climber, doesn't reach the rope anymore to pull himself back on the route. So yeah, you gotta find the balance here between what is convenient and what is safe still. Okay, Thorsten. So, sehr, sehr mutig, muss ich sagen. Was hast du gehalten von den 3 Hauptstürzen, die ich jetzt da nachher vergleichen werde in dem Video, weil die waren, glaube ich, sehr wertvoll von einem Sicherheitsaspekt.
Ja, also Stürze im Überhang sind generell schwierig. Der erste war zu hart. Da hat mir auch der Fuß ein bisschen weh dann, beim an die Wand kommen. Habe dann zu meinem Sicherer gemeint, bitte dynamischer, und die nächsten 2 waren dann wesentlich sanfter. Der dritte war dann richtig gut. Die Überlegung dazu ist, wenn man die Kraft nicht mehr hat, die letzte Echse im Dach zu klippen, vielleicht weiterzuziehen, natürlich wenn der Sturzraum gegeben ist, und dann vielleicht die Echse erst im Dach, also an der Platte zu klippen, ja, um so vielleicht die Route zu schaffen und nicht im Dach K.O. zu gehen.
Genau. Passt.
Danke.